Chapter 8. Lecture.
Hi, everybody. Today we're going to discuss intelligence and how our definition of intelligence, the way we look at intelligence, can impact the way students are taught and evaluated in the classroom. So, we talked last time about IQ, or the intelligence quotient, as a measure of intelligence. I want to continue today by talking about one person who disputes the validity of IQ tests, Howard Gardner. Gardner is a developmental psychologist at Harvard University, and he has some interesting ideas. Gardner thinks that intelligence is not simply one entity, one quality that can be measured by a single aptitude test. No. He argues that people have several types of intelligence, or multiple intelligences. And this is our topic today. So we'll first take a brief look at each of these different types of intelligence. Then we'll talk about some of the criticisms of this theory, and finally look at the impact of this theory on the field of education. So, how did Gardner come up with this? Well, he used biological and cultural research to develop a list of 7 different types of intelligence. We'll discuss each one in a moment, but here is the list. All right. Linguistic intelligence, logical mathematical, spatial intelligence, musical intelligence, bodily kinesthetic intelligence, interpersonal intelligence, intrapersonal intelligence. Okay, now as I said before, we'll take a brief look at each one. This first one, linguistic intelligence, is the ability to learn languages and the ability to use language effectively to express oneself and to remember things. In Gardner's view, writers, poets, lawyers, people like that, possess a high degree of linguistic intelligence. Okay, this next one, logical mathematical intelligence, is the ability to detect patterns, think logically, analyze and solve mathematical problems. People with this type of intelligence excel in math and science. Okay, so you've seen 2 of the 7. Any questions? No? Okay. So now, these first 2 types of intelligence are the ones that have been traditionally valued in schools. And strength in these areas usually correlates to high scores on IQ tests and other standardized tests. Most tests measure only these 2 things. But Gardner argues that other human capabilities should also be included in a definition of intelligence. And he adds 5 more capabilities to the list. So let's take a look at these other intelligences. The next one, spatial intelligence, involves the ability to recognize and use patterns in space, either in small spaces, such as the visual skill of artists and architects, or large spaces, such as the skill needed by airline pilots. Got it? Okay. Next, we have musical intelligence. Now, this includes the ability to recognize and compose musical pitches, tones, and rhythms. We all know someone who is just naturally musical, right? Maybe someone who can play the piano, even though they can't read the music or never took lessons. You know what I mean. Well, that's a form of intelligence too, according to Gardner. Now, the next one is called bodily kinesthetic intelligence. This isn't a common word, but kinesthesia has to do with the movements of the body. So bodily kinesthetic intelligence refers to the ability of a person to move and coordinate the body or parts of the body. Athletes, dancers, even surgeons who need to have very skilled hands, all have highly developed intelligence in this area. Okay? The last two, well, these intelligences are what Gardner refers to as the personal intelligences. There's the interpersonal intelligence, which is social intelligence, and intrapersonal intelligence, which is internal, about yourself. So, interpersonal, that's inter, meaning between, among. Interpersonal. This reflects a person's ability to understand other people, their feelings and motivations, and to work effectively with others. Educators, salespeople, counselors, people who work with other people as individuals. These are examples of people who need this type of intelligence. On the other hand, intrapersonal, intra or inward, internal, it's related to self-understanding. It reflects the ability to understand one's own feelings and motivations and control one's own emotions. Okay, so there are the 7 intelligences: linguistic, logical mathematical, spatial, musical, bodily kinesthetic, interpersonal, intrapersonal. They are 7 different things, but Gardner points out that they rarely operate independently. We all use different intelligences simultaneously at the same time to perform tasks or solve problems. For example, think about a dancer. A dancer uses musical intelligence to understand the rhythm and variations of the music, bodily kinesthetic intelligence to perform the dance moves, to make the pattern of the dance, and interpersonal intelligence to interpret the emotions of the dance and relate to the audience. You see? One task, but many different intelligences in use. Okay, moving on. So there's been a lot of criticism of this theory among psychologists who study intelligence. All right. So, number 1, critics have argued that Gardner is simply using intelligence to describe talents or interests. So, these critics say if you took Gardner's idea to the extreme, almost any talent could be added to the list of intelligences. On top of that, critics point out that this theory doesn't provide a reliable way to test intelligence or measure it, unlike the IQ test, which gives you a number, a score. So there's another criticism. Now, remember that according to Gardner, all human beings are intelligent, just in different ways. But critics say that looking at intelligence in such a broad way makes the study of intelligence meaningless. In other words, with no clear way of measuring intelligence, we also have no way of comparing the intelligence of one person and another. So, the critics say, with no way to measure or compare the intelligence of different people, what's the point of talking about intelligence at all? Fair point. But despite these criticisms, this theory has had a big impact on education, and many educators have found its ideas useful. I'll wrap up by giving you 3 ways that Gardner's ideas have affected teaching. Okay, the theory of multiple intelligences has encouraged schools and teachers to value all types of students and to recognize that students learn in different ways. As a result, teachers are starting to present their material in different ways, in ways that include all the 7 intelligences. So a teacher could include pictures or graphs, and maybe students could build something or make a model with their hands. Also, children need to be assessed in a different way, not just with paper and pencil tests. Students should be allowed to explain what they've learned in their own ways, maybe through oral reports or art projects. Well, that's all we have time for today. Next time, we'll look at some more types of intelligence proposed by Gardner. Oh, and don't forget that your papers are due next Thursday. See you then.